Okay, I want you to try something with me. It's a bit of a mental exercise, so just bear with me for a second.
All right, I'm game.
I want you to try and remember a time, maybe when you were really, really young, or maybe just a fleeting moment last week, where you weren't trying to be anything.
Mm.
You weren't a parent, you weren't an employee, you weren't, a good citizen or a rebel. You just were.
That is a surprisingly hard place to get back to.
It is right, because the second you try to think about it, all the noise rushes in. Did I send that email? Am I sitting up straight? Do I look okay?
Yeah, the performance starts immediately.
Exactly. But the text we're diving into today argues that this state isn't just some nice memory. It claims this is our factory setting. It calls it original coherence.
And that is a heavy concept to start with.
It really is. We're looking at a piece called The Genealogical Twist, Integration and Coherence. And I have to be honest with you, when I first picked this up, that title, it threw me.
I can see why.
Genealogical twist. It sounds like a plot point in I don't know, a Victorian mystery novel where someone finds out they're secretly the heir to a fortune.
It does have that ring to it. But here, genealogical is doing some very specific heavy lifting. It's not about your family tree in the Ancestry.com sense.
Right.
It's about the genealogy of you, the history of how your identity was formed, step by step, and where exactly that twist happened that took you away from that original factory setting.
Okay, so we're doing an investigation into our own history. We're trying to figure out why so many of us feel like we're playing a character in a movie we didn't even write.
Mm.
The text uses this phrase, performing instead of living. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks.
It's the central tension of the entire piece. It's that difference between the you that exists and the you that is presented to the world.
Yeah.
And the source material gets into some pretty wild territory to explain it.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about astrodynamics, false reversed illusions, and even the physics of love.
Astrodynamics was the point where I almost checked out, I'll admit. I thought, great, are we going to blame my anxiety on Mercury being in retrograde?
A fair concern.
But we'll get to that because apparently I was wrong. Let's start at the beginning. Original coherence. The text says, and I'm quoting here, originally, we are all born in the most coherent expression of our soul's intent.
Big statement.
Huge. Now, playing devil's advocate here, isn't that just a fancy way of saying destiny? Like, I was born to be a podcast host, and if I'm not, I'm failing.
No, and I'm so glad you pushed on that because the distinction is vital. If you think of destiny, you usually think of a destination.
A specific job, a specific partner.
Exactly. A specific life path. And if you miss that exit on the highway, you're lost. The text is very, very explicitly saying that is not what this is.
So it's not a map.
It's not a map. It's a signal. Think of coherence as like a clean radio frequency. Before you add all the static of the world, the signal is crystal clear. It's an internal alignment where your inside matches your outside. A toddler is a perfect example of this. When a toddler is happy, they are 100% happy. When they are mad, they are 100% mad. There's no filter, no should, no what will the neighbors think. That's coherence.
Okay, that makes total sense. A toddler isn't thinking, I should probably cry more quietly so I don't disturb the brunch vibe.
They just cry.
They just cry, but we can't stay toddlers. We have to grow up. And this is where the trouble starts, according to the text.
Right, because you can't exist in a vacuum. You exist in a world full of other people and systems and structures. And this brings us to that term you were skeptical about.
Yes, astrodynamics.
Astrodynamics.
Yeah, talk me off the ledge here. Why are we talking about stars and planets in a text about psychology?
It's a metaphor. And the source is very clear. It's just a metaphor. It's for physics specifically. Gravity.
Okay, gravity. I can work with that.
Think about how the solar system works. You have these massive bodies, planets, stars, and they exert a gravitational pull on everything around them. In the context of our identity, those massive bodies are things like your family culture, societal expectations, religious institutions, or even just the unspoken rules of your friend group.
So astrodynamics are the gravitational forces of my environment.
Precisely. The text says these forces are symbolic, not deterministic, but they're heavy. Imagine you're a small planet, that original coherence, and you swing a little too close to a massive planet called parental expectations.
Okay.
That planet has gravity. It pulls you, warps your orbit. You don't just float freely anymore. You move in relation to that massive object.
That's a really helpful image because it's not necessarily malicious, right? Gravity isn't mean.
No, not at all. It's just heavy. It's just physics. And the text lists these pressures: environmental pulls, cultural expectations, relational dynamics. These create what it calls shadow and contrast.
You need something to push against.
You can't develop an identity without it. The problem isn't that the gravity exists. The problem is what happens to us when the gravity is so strong that we have to distort ourselves just to keep from crashing.
And this brings us to the title of the piece, the genealogical twist. This is the adaptation.
Yes.
And I want to go back to that word genealogical for a second. Why that specific word? Why not just the identity twist?
Because genealogy implies a lineage, a sequence of events over time. The twist isn't something that just happens once on a Tuesday.
Ah, it's a history.
It's a historical adaptation in your own life story. The text suggests that at some point in your personal history, usually very, very early on, you encountered a force that was stronger than you.
Like what?
Maybe it was a parent who needed you to be quiet in order to be lovable.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a school system that needed you to sit still to be considered good.
So the twist is the moment I learned that just being myself wasn't safe or wasn't going to get me what I needed.
Yes. And to survive that moment, you twisted. You altered your shape. You moved your coherence to the side to accommodate that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And the text gets really specific here, and it talks about gender and identity. It says, genders have not failed or broken. They have moved, adapted, inverted, and reconfigured in response to pressure.
I found that to be such a compassionate take. Because usually if you feel out of alignment, especially with something as fundamental as gender or your deep identity, the internal monologue is, I'm broken.
Or I'm doing it wrong.
I'm doing it wrong. Exactly. We internalize it as a personal failure. But the text is saying, no, look at the physics.
Right.
If you have a sapling growing next to a chain link fence and the tree grows through the fence, the tree isn't broken.
No, it adapted to the obstacle. It twisted to survive.
But and this is the kicker. That tree is now stuck in the fence.
Exactly. And that is the state most adults find themselves in. The text uses this really vivid metaphor of the garment. It says, many people end up wearing identities like garments that do not quite fit.
Oof. I feel like we need to sit with that image for a second. Have you ever actually worn clothes that were just wrong?
Oh, absolutely.
Like shoes that were a size too small or a jacket where you couldn't really lift your arms?
Of course. And you're constantly aware of it.
You can't focus on anything else. You're at a party trying to talk to someone, but 90% of your brain is just screaming, my feet hurt, or this collar is choking me.
Well, imagine that sensation, but it's your personality. It's your social role. It's the way you interact with your spouse or your boss.
That low-level, constant friction of, this doesn't quite fit.
That is what the source calls the false reversed illusion.
The false reversed illusion. That sounds like a magician's trick that went wrong. It implies something is backward.
It implies that the flow of energy is backward.
Yeah.
In original coherence, expression moves from the inside out. You feel something, you express it.
Simple enough.
In the false reversed illusion, the form is imposed from the outside in. The world hands you a molded garment and says, squeeze into this.
And if you don't fit, you squeeze harder.
You hold your breath. You contort. The text describes this experience as feeling constrained instead of expressive.
And performed instead of lived.
Yes.
Performed instead of lived. I think that's the diagnostic test right there. If you walk into a room, your office, your living room, your parents' house, and you feel like you have to turn on a version of yourself that takes effort to maintain,
You're in the twist.
you're in the illusion. And it is exhausting. Think about the caloric burn of maintaining a performance 24/7.
It's no wonder people are burnt out. They aren't just tired from work. They are tired from holding the pose.
So we've established that we are all likely twisted to some degree. We're wearing these itchy, ill-fitting garments because at some point in our genealogy, we had to put them on to survive the gravity of our world. Now the million-dollar question, how do we take it off?
Well, the instinct, and I see this all the time, is to just rip it off. Burn the garment.
The midlife crisis approach. That's it. I'm quitting my job, buying a motorcycle, and moving to Bali.
Right. I'm going to do the exact opposite of whatever I was told to do.
Yeah.
But the text gives a very, very strong warning here. It says, the solution is not reversal for its own sake.
Why not? If the garment is uncomfortable, why shouldn't I just burn it to the ground?
Because reversal is still a reaction to the original pressure. If you tell me to sit down and I stand up just to spite you, you are still controlling my behavior.
I'm just doing the inverse of your command.
Exactly. I'm not free. I'm just rebellious. The text says the goal isn't reversal. It is integration.
Integration. Okay, that's a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot in like corporate retreats. Let's integrate our synergies. But what does it actually mean here philosophically?
It means acknowledging the twist without being defined by it. It means looking at that tree in the fence and saying, okay, that fence is part of my history. I can't pretend it didn't happen.
Right, I can't just chop off the part of me that grew through the wire.
Exactly. Instead, you have to find a way to bring that experience back into alignment with your original intent. You integrate the adaptation.
So it's not about erasing the past or erasing the survival mechanisms we built.
No, not correction, not erasure. That's a direct quote from the source. It's about a return. The text calls it coherent freedom, and it defines this freedom beautifully.
Yes.
Expression without subordination.
Expression without subordination. Okay, let's ground this. What does that actually look like? Say I'm in a relationship where I've been performing the role of the perfect, agreeable partner. I've been twisted.
Right.
What does expression without subordination look like on a Tuesday night?
It looks like stating a need or a feeling without waiting for permission and without fearing that the whole relationship will collapse if you do.
So in the twist, you subordinate your reality to keep the peace.
You suppress the signal.
Mm-hmm.
In coherent freedom, you broadcast your signal clearly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired. I am happy. I need this. You aren't trying to dominate the other person,
Yeah.
but you certainly aren't submitting to them either. You are just present.
And that leads us to the section on love. I have to say, this part caught me off guard. The text pivots from all this heavy talk of astrodynamics and garments to a really simple definition of love.
The death.
It says, love, in its true form, does not require dominance or submission. It requires presence.
This is the emotional climax of the whole argument, I think. Because think about why we twist in the first place. Why do we let those astrodynamic forces warp us?
To belong, to be safe, to be loved.
Exactly. We learned really early on that love is conditional. If I fit into this mold, I will be loved. So we trade our shape for connection.
But the text is saying that is a false trade.
It is.
Yeah.
Because if you are twisting yourself to be loved, who's being loved?
The mask, the garment.
Right. The performance is being loved. The you underneath is still lonely. That's why presence is the requirement. You cannot be truly loved if you are not truly there. If you are hiding behind the performance, the love can't actually reach you.
That is actually kind of terrifying.
It is. It's terrifying because it asks us to drop the shield.
It's asking us to risk rejection. Because if I drop the performance, if I take off the ill-fitting garment and I just stand there in my original coherence, there's a real chance the people around me won't like what they see.
That is the risk.
Yeah.
The text doesn't shy away from that at all, but it argues that the alternative living in that false reverse delusion is worse.
A kind of slow spiritual suffocation.
That's a good way to put it. The text describes the resolution as a state where identity is no longer policed and love is no longer conditioned on conformity.
Love is no longer conditioned on conformity. That sounds like the ultimate goal, a relationship, whether with a partner, a parent, or society itself, where I don't have to contort myself to be allowed in the room.
And just as importantly, where you don't demand that others contort themselves for you either.
That's the dominance part.
It is. Once you stop twisting yourself, you usually stop demanding that everyone else twist to make you comfortable. You just let people be.
So when we achieve this integration, what are we left with? Are we perfect? Are we finished developing?
Far from it. The text uses two very specific words to describe the outcome. Fluid and grounded.
Fluid without being unstable, grounded without being rigid.
I love that pairing because usually we think those are opposites. If you're fluid, you're wishy-washy. If you're grounded, you're stubborn and rigid.
But the text is saying you can be both.
Think about a healthy athlete. They are grounded, they have a solid stance, they aren't falling over. But they're also fluid. They can move, react, pivot in an instant.
Versus the twist, which is rigid. If you're wearing a suit of armor that's 2 sizes too small, you can't move. You're just stiff.
Exactly. When you integrate, you get your range of motion back. You can adapt to life's pressures without losing your fundamental shape. You become resilient, not just resistant.
It's a powerful image. It takes us from being a victim of these astrodynamic forces just getting pulled around by gravity to being a body with its own gravity.
That's a beautiful way to put it. You generate your own gravity. You possess your own center.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We started with original coherence, that clear signal we were all born with. We talked about the astrodynamic forces of family and culture that pull on us.
We walked through the genealogical twist, that historical moment where we adapted to the pressure by, well, distorting ourselves.
We felt the itchiness of the false reverse illusion, wearing our lives like bad clothes. And finally, we looked at integration.
The return to presence, where love doesn't demand we disappear.
It's a journey from performative safety to risky, real freedom.
Risky, real freedom. I like that.
Before we let everyone go, I want to leave you with a question. We talked a lot about that trade-off, presence versus conformity, and you mentioned that we do it to be safe.
Yes, that's the core motivation.
So here's the question for you listening, and it's one I'm going to be asking myself in the mirror later. Identify one place in your life right now, maybe a specific relationship, a specific meeting at work, or even a family dinner where you are trading your presence for safety.
Where are you holding your breath just to keep the peace?
And ask yourself, is the peace worth the price of your breath?
Oof. That's the one right there.
Thank you for helping me navigate this. It was denser than I expected, but I think we found the thread.
I think we did.
Yeah.
It's always worth untangling the twist.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Take a deep breath, a real one, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.